sometimes you have to walk away from relationships for the betterment of yourself, but also for the other person also.
Yep. Hey, welcome to the Friday edition of the Grace Life Church podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, watching. I'm the host, Brian Clark. I'm the lead pastor at Grace Life Church. I've got my special guest, Craig Rumbley. He's been co-hosting with me this week. We've been talking about forgiveness or unforgiveness and how it can be a trap that Satan sets for you. And we've been making the point that Jesus made in Luke 17, where Jesus said it is not possible for offenses not to come. They're going to happen. And so the reality is, if we're going to live this life, we've got to figure out how to do offense and how to process offense and do it well, because it's coming at you. And the point I've been really trying to make is too many people quit. They quit jobs, they quit marriages, they quit relationships, they quit churches, they quit, you name it, thinking if I quit this, then I've dealt with my problem. And that's not true. The problem is offense, and it's going to come find you. If you quit the will of God and go do your own thing, you're still going to have opportunities to get offended. And so we've got to learn how to process offense well, and we want to process offense and stay in the will of God. In other words, that's what I would rather do. I'd rather stay in the job I'm called to, the marriage I'm called to, whatever, than just quit a bunch of stuff and still be offended anyway. It's coming regardless. I might as well deal with it. And so that's the principle we've been looking at. We've gone through some practical stuff this week, but today what I want to focus on the Friday podcast is the practical side of, okay, I've forgiven, now what? Does that mean act like nothing ever happened and I go back to the employer that's lied to me? Or do I go back to the physically abusive relationship if you're being abused? Or do I go back to the friendship where the person keeps lying to me or doing me wrong or harming me? Do I go back, or can I not go back? And if I don't go back, is that unforgiveness? Because a lot of people have questions about that. And so that's what we're going to look at today. And so Craig, that was kind of a long introduction, but what do you do? When do you draw the line? Is it wrong to even draw a line? I mean, is it complete restoration with forgiveness? All relationships and everything is restored? Or is it okay biblically to draw a line sometimes?
It is biblically okay to draw your lines. You can love someone, but in loving them and forgiving them, it's from afar off. Because if you were to stay close or be in a relationship, there's probably going to be more offense take place, more opportunities for harm to be done, and just because you forgive someone, you've chosen to forgive them doesn't mean they've asked for forgiveness.
Yeah.
They may not have forgiveness in their heart or want to be forgiven. They may still going to be acting bad or doing bad things, and so you don't have to put yourself in a situation where you have to endure that. You forgive them and move on.
Is this kind of like King David and Saul? Or he wasn't even king then, it was Saul. Saul was the king, but David, came and lived in the palace, married Saul's daughter, Michal, and then Saul was trying to kill him. And then finally, David had no malice in his heart towards Saul. He had restoration, but he left because Saul kept throwing javelins at him and trying to send men to kill him. And yet David had a heart of forgiveness.
Yeah.
And
there was times you see in that story where David had more than one opportunity that he could have taken Saul's life if he wanted to, or even his men talked about doing it, and David said, no, we're not going to touch God's anointed.
Yep.
So he honored Saul, even though Saul was not honoring to him.
Yeah.
And so, he left. He tried to get away to put distance between. You can look at the same thing with Abraham and Lot. Their men, it wasn't really that Lot and Abraham were having contention, but it was their men, their herdsmen were having contention and causing problems. And Abraham said, let's just divide, let's separate. And you see Abraham trusted God. He said, Lot, you choose. And Lot chose the most, practically speaking, the best place.
Correct. Yep.
And Abraham went the other way, but God blessed him. And we know now that Lot because of where Lot chose, it actually caused trouble for him, in the end, in that story. But sometimes you have to walk away from relationships for the betterment of yourself, but also for the other person also. Yeah. And it's not wrong to do that. If your heart is after God, you're listening to God. And I've got people I love, but I'm not as close to them now as I used to be years ago. There's seasons that we go through. Mm-hmm. We go in our walk of life. We're going to have seasons where God brings people into our life for that season that can help us, mentor us, or even, I won't say God brought them in, but there's going to be times that there's going to be people that trouble us in different seasons of our life. Now you can learn from it. You can grow, just like the woman you worked with. You learned from that. It's a testimony now, but you're not. You probably haven't heard from her in years.
Yeah, probably been 7 or 8 years at least.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this then: if it is possible to forgive but keep distance, how do you know when? When do I decide? Okay, this person did me wrong. They lied to me. When do I decide to maybe just restore the relationship completely, or when do I decide hey, we need to keep some distance here?
I would say it depends on what type of relationship it is. For one, okay, let's just say, for my example with the money issue and the businessman, I learned that, no matter how good a business he was in business, I couldn't do business with him.
Yeah.
I couldn't partner with him in business because, I'd probably lose more if I did. And so, I respect he's dead now, his family, but their business is probably $100 million a year business here in North Carolina, in what they do, the family business that they have, and so they do well for themselves, and I don't have no hate or anything for them, but I don't personally, I don't do business with them, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't have any.
Because you're not.
Yeah, I don't have anything against them at all.
You don't want to go back and redo business with somebody that's shown a pattern, an unrepentant pattern that they're going to steal from you.
Yeah, and I don't have any negative. If I needed to go there for something, I would. I don't, but I could, and it wouldn't bother me. To spend money at their business if I needed to.
Gotcha.
And so, but it's one of these things I don't let them rent space in my mind anymore.
What about, and there, that is it was kind of a vague question because there's so many examples. So what about in a marriage situation? So if a man's beating a woman should forgive, wife should forgive. Is it wrong for her to say, I don't want to live in the same house as you anymore, I don't feel safe? Is that unforgiveness?
No, that's just being smart.
Yeah.
It's being wise, especially if he doesn't want to change.
Yeah.
I just met, on our outreaches we did last week or 2 weeks ago, we introduced you to a woman that we'd talked to the week before, a woman named Melissa, all right? She's married, and she says, me and my husband are still married, but we can't live together. I said, we go out, we go on dates, and said we still get along great, but he says, this is what makes our marriage work. They live in separate households. Now, I don't know if that's the best situation, but for them, it's working.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I don't know all the backstory. Only thing I know is she's got dogs and he's got cats.
Cats, if I like cats and dogs.
But anyways, they make it work that way. Is that practical? There's people that I've heard of, I don't know personally, but that they live in the same house, but they live on separate sides of the house, and that's how they make their marriage work. Is that, to me, it seems foreign. Even living apart seems foreign. I wouldn't want to do that with my wife, but there's grace that they have to make things work. Maybe one's a deep snorer and the other one can't sleep.
So it's not a one size fits all type of.
I don't think so. I think you'd have to be led by the Spirit. And if you're praying and you're seeking God, He's smarter than any of us. He's smarter And so he can give you counsel how to make things work and set things in place.
Well, I just thought through it recently. You know, kind of think Paul and Barnabas, they split, and I really don't think that was the will of God necessarily, but they had a contention over John Mark because John Mark went on the first missionary journey, and then he bailed out, and so Paul said, "Let's not bring him again. We can't trust him." And Barnabas wanted to bring him. Barnabas just believed him, and you know, I personally think like the best thing would have been for them to work it out. But if it can't, you know, at the end of the day, God still used Paul mightily. God still used Barnabas mightily, and God still used John Mark mightily.
And if you look at it, you know, God didn't cause the contention, but you know, God allows us to have free will.
Yeah.
Paul and Barnabas, you know, they were probably headstrong. Both of them, their opinion in their eyes was the correct opinion, right? Both sides, you know, probably had fidelity on both sides. But so they decided we're going to split. Even though they had been good ministry partners, they decided to split. But you know what? They got twice as much done.
Yeah.
Splitting and having and it gave opportunity for Apollos and Timothy to be raised up by Paul,
Silas
and Silas,
yeah.
and then John Mark and Barnabas, you know, went and did ministry, and so they have even though it wasn't maybe God's perfect will, God was able to bless both of them and still get the gospel out to these nations.
Which is the nature of God. God's often able to take our mess and
He can turn around the bad for good.
He'll take our mess and make it look like it was part of the plan.
Yeah,
that's how good and amazing God is. So, well, I hope today's encouraging. This week's encouraging. I know it's been a tough topic, but dealing with forgiveness and unforgiveness. Now, unforgiveness can be the snare of the devil. So today we wanted to close out just practical things. Just because you've forgiven does not mean you have to completely restore a relationship. As Craig said, I think it really does come back to a situational thing. If you need help, that's part of going to a good church, right? And getting good pastoral counsel, going through these situations to be able to discern, okay, is this a situation that I need to restore and completely return all trust, or do we need to separate for a season, or maybe forgive, but we do have some boundaries. And so anyway, that's why you have good churches out there, good pastors, good small group leaders, etc., that can help you kind of work through the gray in some of this stuff. So thank you guys so much for watching, tuning in. God bless you. Have an amazing weekend, and we'll see you next week.